ready?
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I am actually going to interview my good friend here, Rich Schultheis. And Rich is the ride ambassador for Ottawa Bike and Trail. So we got together earlier this year and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if Rich would go out to all the races or a lot of the races in the area and wear the Ottawa Bike and Trail jersey and just let people know about our shop. So Rich agreed to do it, and we've been having fun kind of working out what he's going to do this year and what his race season looks like. And the idea is that when Rich goes to a race, he's going to come back and tell us all about it and kind of let us know about all the different races going on. Myself owning a bike shop, it's a little hard for me to get out there and go to these events. Plus, Rich is a hell of a lot more competitive than I could ever be. So it's worked out great. Rich has already done a couple of races. So we're going to do a quick interview and just talk a little bit about Rich and what he's doing. And he's going to fill us in on some of the racing action that he's been participating in over the last few months. So, Rich, say hi, introduce yourself.
How's it going? Yeah, happy to be here and happy to talk about whatever we want to get into.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, tell everybody a little bit about your background with biking and kind of how you got into racing and what how long you've been doing races, actual races, and all of that.
Sure. Like a lot of people that in bikes, I've been doing this for most of my life. My first bike race is probably when I was 8 years old, racing BMX. I'm from Western Pennsylvania originally, so it goes back a long way. In different times in my life, I did a lot more riding and a lot less. But I started out in BMX, moved into, it was in the late 90s, mountain biking was pretty big back then and in Pennsylvania. So I did a fair amount of mountain bike racing in high school, some into college, and then kind of, into college, moving around to different parts all over the U.S. pretty much, and did do a ton of biking, and then moved to Kansas in about 2012 and started getting back into it pretty seriously. And if you live in this part of Kansas, riding on gravel roads and gravel bikes is one of the most common things, or one of the easiest things to get into because there's so many opportunities.
Yeah.
So around then I started getting more serious again and started picking up and putting on more miles. And probably since that time I've participated in at least a couple of events, probably about every year.
Yeah.
And started getting into the events locally and a little bit of traveling when I can as well.
So you, like most people around here, Dirty Kansas kind of captured your imagination?
Yeah, to be honest. So I lived in Emporia when I first moved to Kansas, and that was 2011, 2012, somewhere around then. It was a much different event than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
A lot smaller, but still. Actually, when I came to look at houses and look at the area, it was DK weekend.
Yeah.
Pretty cool weekend to be in Emporia.
Right.
To see the event, and yeah, for sure, I think that definitely played a role in my interest in the the gravel scene and that kind of stuff. Like a lot of people in this part of it.
Yeah, that and Mid-South probably at the time you were.
Yep. And so I've been to some of the bigger ones in this area, and I don't know, it's one of those things that the events and the experience and the people are really that kind of bring you back. And it's partially the competition and pushing yourself, but a lot of it has to do with the fun you have when you're there and the people you meet and those kind of things for me.
Yeah. So you've been racing on and off for quite a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm particularly like a serious, I'm not going to be the front of the pack, racing for the win at a big event type thing, but probably, I don't know, so I think I did a DK, like maybe the 50 or something in 13, and then moved up into the 100, and then from there, that's probably when I got a little more serious.
Yeah. So you haven't done the 200 yet. We're going to talk a little bit about the big event this year, but so 100 miles, is that, what other races have you done, like kind of big races?
Yeah, so Mid-South or Land Run at the time, that's another 100 I've done. That's probably the longest distance. A lot of things like 100K type things.
Yeah.
A lot of the local Emporia, Wichita. I lived down in the Wichita area for a while, so I did a lot of the Bone Shaker series, which was pretty big for a while. I think all of those events. I travel here and there. I do an event in Southern Illinois every year called Dirty South for Bay.
And that's your first event this year, right?
Yeah, it's pretty early in the year. I want to say it's early March. It's usually before Mid-South, and so if you're doing Mid-South, it's kind of a good get you ready for it. And it's a tough event. There's a lot of climbing, and it's a really cool area. And so I try and do that every year that I can, scheduling wise. I try and get down to that one too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know you had, last year was kind of a big year. You had a big plan. 2020, you were going to do all these races. You were training up. I think you did like, what, 4,000 some miles last year?
Yeah, it was a big year.
And then everything got canceled.
Yeah,
and how did that affect your training? I mean, did you keep riding? Did you keep putting in the miles and just, or how
That's
did
a good question. I would say it was kind of a mixed bag for me. One, it opened up a little bit for me because I normally have a long commute. I live in Ottawa here, and I commute to Emporia for work every day. And so that cuts into my leisure time a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's close to an hour drive both ways. So with the shutdowns of everything, in my job, I was actually working remotely for a fair amount of that time.
Yeah.
So it actually opened up a little bit more time for me to ride, you know, during the week. So that wasn't a bad thing. I could get out. I can't remember how many times I rode with someone other than myself last year, but it wasn't many.
Wasn't many, yeah. And we shut down a lot of our group rides. And
that's right.
You're a regular at a lot of those. But and I should say that while we're on the subject of COVID, both Rich and I are vaccinated.
Yep.
So
Yep.
This is the first time we've been able to talk with
That's
masks
right.
for a long time. So we're celebrating that.
Absolutely.
And so you've done a couple of races. You just got back last weekend from the open range gravel grind, right?
Yep, that's right.
So, and you did something a little bit different there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that was the first time I did there. They had a category, maybe last year was the first year for it, but it was like a bikepacking tour type thing. And I've done these at a couple events now. And the idea is sometimes, or a lot of times, you're doing the same course as the long course, but it's a multi-day event. And generally, you know, you have the opportunity to carry all your stuff. So, you know, I have bikepacking gear. It's something I like to do on my own, you know, type thing, wherever. But the event is, so it was a 200K course. It was a 2-day thing. They provided a place for you to camp that night. And so, you know, you carried everything. I looked like just like I'd be going on a multi-day trip.
Yeah.
I think the first day was 80 miles or so, and the second day was another 50 or so. So this, you know, it depends on the event. This one wasn't a timed event. I've done some where they do bikepacking and it's timed.
Yeah.
So this one was a little more leisurely, but at the same time, like, you know, you're moving right along.
Yeah.
When you're done, you know, you're tired because it's a heavy. When you have your bikepacking stuff and you're doing it on a course with a lot of up and down and sand, it's a workout for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, carrying that extra load.
And you know,
completely different experience.
If you go for one night or 2 nights, or if you go for a lot longer, like I haven't done a lot of longer trips, but the gear's not that much different. You just have more food, more supplies. But like, I had a lot of stuff, probably a lot more than I needed, but. You know,
you really learn probably by day 3 you're throwing stuff out that you don't need. You know, a lot of people may not know about those kinds of events, but that's a big trend now. Is to you know, you had the Dirty Kansas 200 miles, or now the Unbound 200 miles, and they added the 350 mile, and then there's all these other races that are bikepacking events, and it's pretty intriguing what's going on there. They're usually smaller events, fewer participants, but completely different thing. And so you've got that. That was your big bikepacking race. You got any other bikepacking races lined up for this year?
So I last year I went to Pony Express, did a bikepacking category last year, and I'm going to go back again this year. It was really fun. Last year was the first year for their bikepacking category. Same thing. I want to say it's 120 or so miles. I can't remember the distance, but same thing, split up over 2 days. And they did, so the way they did theirs last year, and I think again this year, the first day is untimed, the second day is timed. So if you want to do the second day at a faster pace, you can. If not, it's no big deal. And so that is one that I've signed up for, and potentially going to try and take on at least some of the Cannonball, which is a, 550.
550,
Yeah, and so that's a pretty on your own kind of thing, but it's the same weekend as event here in Ottawa that I'm going to be riding on Saturday. So if I do it this year, it may be like I just take on a few days later in the week. You know.
And what event is that here in Ottawa?
Yeah. So good question. So the Bad Astra.
Yeah.
It's that's I want to say it's the third weekend.
Yeah, September 25th. I think.
Yeah. And so
we had to throw that one in. All right, now that we've plugged the Bad Astra, and by the way, you should register for that race if you're at all interested. It's going to be a great event. But let's talk about the big one. So this year you got into Unbound with the 200, right?
I did.
And you've been trying for a few years.
Trying for a while.
And you finally got in, right?
Yep.
So what have you been? So is that kind of the premier event for the year for you at least?
It is.
How you look at your year?
Yeah, and so as far as my training and target, kind of that's 200 miles in one day for me is going to be a new obstacle that I've never attempted, and so training wise and everything, that's kind of been my goal, is to be ready for the Unbound for the 200 this year. And so I ride a lot of those roads. I'm familiar with them. I've done the 100. I've done a lot of events like that, but 200 miles in one day is going to be a big event for me.
That's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
We'll be out there supporting you and waving you on and cheering you on. So that's going to be really exciting. Can't wait to see how that goes.
Yeah.